Hello and welcome. Exiled Minds podcast with Liam Martin, the EMP for your mind. This is our third episode this week. Hope you've had a good week. Nice day. And so this episode is a third episode. It's going to be a bit of consciousness exploration today with a subject I'm particularly interested in. It's kind of segues into many other things that interested in talking about on this show. Some thought-provoking stuff. This week's episode is about the Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma came on my radar years ago through being an interest in martial arts. So when I was a youth, I used to do kung fu. I got pretty okay with it. I was about to take my black belt and kind of start freaking out and kind of quit. But then years later, I took up as an adult studying Pencak Silat martial art, which has a lot of mysticism involved with it. And yeah, Southeast Asian martial art is Malaysia, Indonesia, Java kind of area. It's a bit Javanese mysticism involved. And yeah, the style I learned was from around the Shumandi River. It was the William Sanders system. You know, we sort of brought it over to America. But yeah, I mean, yeah, studied that work with a guy locally, and yeah, there's a lot of spiritual stuff involved with this. And I thought I'd do a show about this because I think sometimes if you've not taken part in martial arts, if you've not sort of been in that circle, in that world, it can look a bit like it's all about just violence, you know. But these spiritual aspects can get missed, especially with MMA and, you know, on the telly and being popular. It sort of just looks like, you know, people having a good scrap. But there's a lot of stuff to this, you know, with the breathing stuff, like Wim Hof I mentioned before. Consciousness, breathing, meditation and martial arts, you know, those spiritual parts kind of go with it. In fact, Pencak Silat, they say that the Pencak in Silat is like the spiritual bit, and without that there is no Pencak Silat. You know, there's a real focus on it. So I thought I'd talk about that and talk about the Bodhidharma, whose story is a really interesting character in history, and is the originator of Shaolin Kung Fu. And what the thing about this is a Buddhist monk of the 5th and 6th century. But I mean, this guy, the surprising thing for me is this guy seems to brazenly be an African dude. Do you know what I mean? And it almost, I mean, when I first heard this guy's name said, I'd heard it as, I might have misinterpreted it, but I'd heard it as that this is a guy that basically, like, well, from my imagination was like he did a Forrest Gump. Dude in Africa just went for a walk one day, and I'd heard he'd come from West Africa originally. I'm not sure, we'll get into this and see if that's exactly true, but yeah, this guy, I'd first heard it, it's like he's basically walked from West Africa, got himself over towards, you know, India and Tibet and China. He ended up at a temple, Shaolin, the Shaolin temple, and yeah, taught him martial arts. And it was like, well, it seems a bit strange. The way I'd heard it is that he just studied animals along his walk and, you know, came up with a martial art based on studying animals. So I thought this would be an interesting one. So I've done martial arts myself, and you know, we can look at, I thought it'd be great to look at fighting, you know, as how long back it goes, and sort of like the hand-to-hand stuff, hand-to-hand combat. Do you know what I mean? Because we see in the movies people kind of doing superhuman things, and, you know, and I'm interested in you know, consciousness exploration, human potential, that sort of stuff. So I thought, yeah, this would be a good topic. So we'll see what Wikipedia, we'll start there with Wikipedia, see what Wikipedia's got to say about this character, the Bodhidharma. So a Wikipedia entry reads, Bodhidharma was a legendary Buddhist monk who lived during the 5th and 6th century, who was traditionally credited as a transmitter of Buddhism into China and regarded, so that's not bad, is it? Is transmitting Buddhism to China? That's a pretty big claim to fame. Okay, so anyway, yeah, so he's regarded as the first Chinese patriarch. Okay, it's big titles. According to Chinese legend, he also began physical training of monks in the Shaolin monastery that led to the creation of Shaolin Kung Fu. Okay, in Japan, he is also known as Daruma. His name means Dharma of awakening, Bodhi, in Sanskrit. So the awakening guy. Yes, some kind of originator of spreading Buddhism. What a guy, you know. That's what I'm thinking. Sounds cool, man. This guy's story. So it says a little contemporary biographical information of Bodhidharma is extant, and subsequently accounts became legend. So, you know, became all layered with legend and unreliable details. So yeah, the true origins, bit hazy of where exactly it comes from. So that was the thing. So, but it says, according to the principal Chinese sources, Bodhidharma came from the western regions, which refers to Central Asia, which may also include Indian subcontinent, as described as either Persia, Central Asia, or South India. Okay, so it could be from South India, you know, from some part of China. But it says throughout Buddhist. Okay, it says here that on Wikipedia. Yeah, so I'll put all the links in the details as always. But throughout Buddhist art, Bodhidharma is depicted as an ill-tempered, profusely bearded, wide-eyed, non-Chinese person. Okay, non-Chinese. All right. So, it's, you know, non-China. It's not China. Okay, it's not from China, it seems. Even in Wikipedia it says that. So, referred to the blue-eyed barbarian. That's how he was thought of. So he's got. So I don't know if his. I don't know his exact origins at the minute, but it looks like he's not China, maybe Indian. Maybe Indian. He's got blue eyes. Okay, so aside from Chinese accounts, several popular traditions also exist regarding the Bodhidharma's origins. The accounts also differ on the date of his arrival, with one early account claiming that he arrived during the Liu Song dynasty from 420 to 479, and later accounts dating of his arrival in the Lang dynasty 502 to 557. The Bodhidharma was primarily active in the territories of northern Wei in 386 to 534. So, I mean, it makes him old as well, doesn't it, that? But anyway, yeah, modern scholars dating back to as early as the 5th century. So, yeah, the 500, yeah, I mean, they're not exactly sure with the Wikipedia, but we'll investigate, you know. There's another little entry from Wikipedia here. It says Bodhidharma's teachings and practices centered on meditation. This is the point I wanted to make with this. It's speaking about meditation. They invented Shaolin Kung Fu, got people training in that. But his practice is centered on meditation. And how many times do we see that in the movies? Yeah? This focus thing. I think there's a reason for this. Okay? There's a reason for this. So, okay, let's continue to read. Bodhidharma's teachings and practice centered on meditation and the Lanka Sutra. Okay, and it's interesting that in Salat there is foundational movements known as Lankas. So interesting. In fact, I'm only just making this link right now as I just read this. So there's the Lanka Foot. That's the footwork that you use in Salat. And when you do a Lanka, it's when you use your footwork to kind of get in a position where your leg's next to someone else's, but you're in a dominant position, so you can kind of like just bend your knees or kind of fold your legs to pin their legs to the ground, kind of thing. You know, like if you imagine putting your knee behind somebody else's knee, but if you're at the correct angle, you can just kind of crouch down, and it'll make their leg go down. But anyway, yeah, Lanka. So that's interesting. So yeah, I mean, Bodhidharma, possibly from India, specifically stating he's depicted as not Chinese. And if you actually have a look at if you look at some of the statues, man, set in stone, aren't they? Carved in. Yeah, I mean, the dude's African. The dude's an African guy. Straight up. You can look. You can see he's got a broad nose. He's got a broad nose. It looks African. You know, it looks African. And I've seen in there's statues in Thailand where they've got pictures of it. There's definitely there's Africans within Buddhism for sure, definitely, especially like say Southeast Asia. There's a lot of statues. There's statues of Buddha, and there's, you know, deities and stuff with broad noses. Definitely African, you know. I like to give Hinduism a mention here as well, because of the Vedics. There was a pretty famous one called Sai Baba, because he got famous as a bit of a guru. It went, some say it went a bit cult leadery because he reckons he can manifest precious stones and things. But I think he used to get them out of his mouth. So people said, he could have swallowed stuff and, trained to bring it back or whatever. I don't know. But Sai Baba, I mentioned him, that Hindu Vedic, because he has a really broad nose and he's got an afro. Well, he used to, he's passed away now. But yeah, he had a brazen afro. So there's a Hindu Vedic. It's clearly African. Obviously, India and Africa, civilizations that go way back. So this Bodhidharma guy, yeah, why not? Why wouldn't it be African? Of course. So in looking into this a bit more, I'm not just going to stick with Wikipedia, obviously, because you can edit Wikipedia yourself. So it's not 100%. It's good for a starting point, but I think you want to research properly. You got to dig. You got to find things for yourself. So I found actually I was really looking into this topic because I came across an article. It was a flashback throwback to a karate magazine, and it was basically talking about an article from 1999, which was in a Black Karate Federation magazine, BKF. And that was talking of the African origins of all martial arts, explaining how untold origins of the oldest martial arts on earth was explored in a book as well, entitled Nuba Wrestling. So then you think, well, actually, yeah, Nuba Wrestling, the African origins of martial arts revealed by Nigel, BPG. I mean, yeah, why not? If Africa's the cradle of civilization, then well, yeah, a lot of this stuff, the ultimate is going to come from Africa. Okay, so I mean, this magazine, not in general, it's 1999, and I think not in general circulation, but it says here it was heralded as a landmark publication because it was the first global acknowledgement of Africa being a birthplace of martial arts and sciences. Okay, which for me is probably stands to reason, doesn't it? If Africa and India and Africa and China, they've been going around a long time anyway. They've been doing civilization the longest, and if Africa's where we all start, then yeah, obviously, it's going to be, things are going to have come from there. We have to start somewhere. If that's a starting point, then that's where they've come from. It makes sense, doesn't it? I think the deal is, we're talking in the 90s. I think we're looking at a situation where, that scholars, academics don't necessarily want to backtrack on stuff, didn't necessarily want to be seen as wrong, and also going to be some racism involved here with not wanting to say what's what, and also if you've got some cool stuff in your culture, you kind of want to make out you've invented it, maybe, But yeah, we'll get onto this. There's a nice little quote from I've not got the book Nuba Wrestling, but look, there's an extract here in this article from this magazine way back. So it says, this magazine was heralded as a landmark publication for the first global acknowledgement of Africa as the birthplace of martial arts and sciences. An extract from the book reads, "The Nuba of Sudan," which is, used to be buddies with Egypt, ancient Egypt. But anyway, the Nuba of Sudan, Africa, practiced a form of martial arts wrestling over 2,800 years before Christ. There are no other records in any corner of the world that can claim such a long and unbroken martial arts tradition. This form of martial arts, which included weapons, as well as fortifications and certainly empty-handed self-defense, blossomed in the 12th dynasty of Egypt. There we go, see? Nuba Wrestling is the original martial art that all of Africa, Asia and Europe later came to benefit from. Which, of course, whatever comes before you, first person to ever throw a punch ever, if you see it, you're going to learn something from it, aren't you? If it's windmilling, you're going to, I changed the motion a bit, that's not working. Of course, you build on the people that's come before you, don't you? So, I mean, and it also turns out as well, I mean, in investigating this, that, yeah, this thing's kind of rife. That even the Greeks, it points out aspects of Greek thought, such as astronomy and mathematics, and the aforementioned arts and sciences, right, they didn't originate from Greece. Okay. Right. But, I mean, and bearing in mind in the West, we use Greek reason and philosophy as the basis of Western civilization as well. Kind of thing. The democracy is Greek. Okay, but it says there's ample evidence that, I mean, the Greeks, it says there's ample evidence and testimony acclaimed by philosophers and historians of ancient Greece, such as Herodotus in 500 BCE, and Pythagoras and Plato and others, okay, supporting the idea that, you know, Greece didn't originate a lot of the stuff that they had. Right. And many of these were put to death. Many people were put to death in Greece because of knowledge that they'd imported. Okay. It says that here that so significant was the source of Greek knowledge and culture that the earliest inhabitants of the land derived their name, Greece, from the ancient name for Africa, Nigritia. So interesting, I didn't know that. Okay, see how these words and things in culture, things cross over, and it's like we've had interactions between us all, you know. But yeah, and it says Greeks' access to Egyptian arts and sciences were recorded by the 7th and 18th century. Europeans in Egypt, such as okay, I can't say this name. Edme F. Jomard, James Burton, Jean Champollion, Robert Hay, and others have, you know, reported on this back in 17th, 18th century, that Greece, yeah, did in fact get a lot of its arts and sciences by having access to Egypt. You know, and buddies can go and check them out and see what they've got. And the famous Greco-Roman wrestling, famous for wrestling, Greece is, you know. And Greco-Roman wrestling attributes the origins of the sport to illustrations discovered on the walls at the region of ancient Egypt, or as the region Mahez. Okay. It was renamed Beni Hassan, which means a hill of the son of the Hassan family, Beni Hassan. So in the Beni Hassan temple, I mean, there's this painting, there's, you know, depictions on the wall of people doing wrestling maneuvers, you know, and there's the paintings that got African martial artists. Okay, you've got these African martial artists, and you know, Egyptians and that doing. It basically depicts different kinds. They look like different locks and throws. There's lots and lots of them, you know. So the illustrations point to a well-developed science that actually developed in Nubia, but reached the zenith of expression in Egypt. Okay, so you got these paintings in Africa of people doing these martial arts like way before, and obviously then Greece coming after, and you know, they've got some of that knowledge. And why not, right? It says the illustrations total well over 500 individual pairs of wrestlers who are executing hundreds of sophisticated techniques. Do you know what I mean? Somebody's sat and thought about it and worked this. You know, they've worked it out. Of course. People don't just sit around all history out on their ass waiting for Netflix to come along, are they? They're doing stuff. You know? Yeah, so... and. Yeah, so it says here that in the article, it says the scenes of martial arts. There are scenes of martial artists using weapons such as the lance, short sticks, daggers, staffs, bow and arrows, and even scenes of warriors utilising military technology such as a testudo, which is like a shielding device that you use when you like put a castle under siege, and it kind of like covers you while you're like, trying to bash the door in and shit. But yeah, I mean, it's... yeah, so it's like... Got these depictions from Egypt, back in the day. It's like it's come from Sudan, and then got refined, and then people are using that stuff in Egypt, and and why not, right? There's probably a lot of stuff going on back in ancient Egypt. Warriors and well, I don't know. But yeah, let's go on. So how do we get to the Bodhidharma? So we'll get there. We will get there. Sort of doing this origins thing at the minute, but it's important. It's important, for in general, and it's important for where was this guy coming from? Is he saying he wants Chinese, possibly Indian, but kind of looks African when you depict him? So let's go on. It says it says here there was an article back in 1941 about ancient life in Egypt. Include portions of scenes from the tomb. So we've got some pictures from there belonging to Prince Baqet III. Okay, and it was talking about how it says, by contrasting body colours of Egyptian athlete and his Negro opponents of ancient sports artists made clear the handholds, many of which are identical with those used today. So what we're talking about here is that differently painted people are showing the contrast. So you can kind of see where things are. You can see where the hands and arms, where the limbs are placed, sort of thing. And like I mentioned before, it's mentioning that there was a denial of the true origins of a lot of things due to prejudice. Because he said the Western world often discredited the ancient Kemetic roots, meaning Africa. Kemet is the ancient name for another ancient name for Africa, Kemet. Hence the word chemistry. That's why, if you're not aware, that's where the word chemistry comes from Kemet. The alchemy of Kemet then becomes the word chemistry and alchemy. Alchemy and chemistry, intrinsic ones, both doing chemistry. It's different philosophies behind it, but yeah. So, Kemet, name of Africa, Kemetic, the Kemetic roots. That just means the roots of Kemet, as in from Africa. Okay. So in the case of martial arts, then they're probably never provided with the keys to unlock the martial arts. If you're just taking pictures, even if they're really detailed, then the spiritual aspects aren't there. What are you thinking at this moment? How are you feeling? The little nuanced stuff is not quite there, is it? I suppose it's a bit like. Well, someone would give it a comparison here. It says it's like bootlegging a software program without the instructions to run it. Although you may eventually figure it out on your own, no one would know that program as well as the programmer. This is true. And I suppose it's like, I was going to say, it's a bit like you're missing part of the communication. Like if you can send the stuff in a text message, it's great. But if you had a teacher there, then, you've got a two-way thing and you get to places faster, can't you? Something's not quite right, they can see it and adjust it, and So yeah, it's better to be taught it properly, and just trying to sort of back engineer it or recreate it. You probably are gonna miss bits out. So yeah, probably did have some of the keys missing. Okay, and it says that more salient aspects of Kemet thought, such as science and the science of Maat, encourage justice, truth, righteousness, and correct action to direct the spiritual forces that will be encountered with the intense study of the physical martial sciences. So that kind of makes it sound a bit like... So encouraging justice, truth, righteousness, and correct actions to direct spiritual forces that would be encouraged with the intense study of physical martial sciences. Okay, so it sounds like Jedi stuff. If you want to use the Force, and you've got to use it wisely and don't go to the dark side. Do you know what I'm saying? And you see this with one of the guys, Bruce Lee, one of the foundation teachers. They had Ip Man, Master Ip. You see in the Ip Man movies, it was so good. There was lots of opportunities during fights where it could wreck people, but it doesn't, because he's that good. In fact, sometimes he's about to do something and he would change what he does so as not to hurt the person. They say, that's what I say, this spiritual aspect of martial arts, it really matters in terms of like I say, being a nice person and then just wreck people up because you can. And also, the more you work that side of things, the better you can do the physical stuff. You know, so if you really do need it, you know what I mean, you've got it, but you can only get it if you're prepared to not use it. Do you know what I'm saying? It's a bit of a weird one, right? But yeah, I mean, it says, I mean, it's going back to this article. It says, so we've got this: the correct action, the spiritual aspects, the righteousness, the truth and justice being emphasized. Okay, and then it goes on to say there are also the teachings of the 7 principles of the Great Egypt Tuhuti. Okay, so Tahuti was what the Greeks called Hermes. Hermes, man. And Hermes is major. Hermes' philosophy is staff of Hermes, called the Kadush, which is the medical symbol it still used today. It's like a kind of pillar, a sort of spike with 2 snakes wrapped around it. That's the medical symbol. You know, some say it's a DNA symbol, but that's another story. Probably do a show on that. But yeah, the 7 principles of the Egyptian Tuhuti, aka Hermes, staff of Hermes. The Hermes philosophy. I mean, Hermes was translated in contemporary times. Earlier, they had a choice of what you're going to translate, Plato or Hermes. They went for Hermes first. Obviously, considered more important, right? So Hermes is major with alchemy and spiritual, all the spiritual stuff, man, and magic and all that stuff. Okay, Hermes is a big character. He's a major character. So then to discover into exploring this, you know, we're seeing that. Hermes is an African dude, Tahuti, known to be super smart. It says these teachings and sciences, along with meditation, breath control, concentration, and the correct application of martial arts, will lead to the release of powerful inner forces, right? Use the force, Luke. Yeah? Use your chi, your ki, your prana. Yeah? Get your organ on, charged up. You know what I'm saying? The spark. Yeah? But yeah, anyway, yeah, it says... that powerful inner forces is represented by a serpent, okay, and that ties in to what's known as the Kundalini in its sister civilization, India, right? So they got Kundalini, the energy that kind of goes up your spine, connect your chakras together, yeah. So we've got this serpent, the serpent of wisdom, all right. We've got that, say, possibly it got it for the medical symbol, 2 snakes. Serpent is a symbol of wisdom. Okay. Even if you go back to the Bible, actually, it's a serpent saying, eat the apple, you'll figure stuff, you'll get smart. You know, whatever. But anyway, in the West, spiritual aspects were neglected, not understood, and in some cases withheld altogether. Okay. So I think, like I say, I mentioned with the Greeks, I think in fairness to the Greeks, they're probably just back engineering something they didn't know all of it. But like you say, there's spiritual teachings, you know. They could have perhaps gone and learnt about Buddhism and then see how the two relate, you know, whatever. But yeah, and like I say, maybe they did. It says withheld altogether. I think, wow, why withhold it, right? Maybe it works. They're like, oh, damn. Don't want to be teaching this to everybody, because then, you know what I'm saying? Because I think of like Tai Chi masters. I think of Tai Chi masters, man. They'd be like, the stories say that they used to be able to leave the body. They could sit down, meditate, leave the body, like have an out-of-body experience, just at will. But you've still got full physical force. So you can't lock them up. You know, you lock them up, they just meditate, get out of the cell, knock the guard out, get the key, go and unlock the cell, and then just walk out. So, you know, it makes me think of that stuff. I think, hang on a minute. But, you know, it's... Because this is... there's stuff about people. People are cool, man. People can do stuff. I mean, like I say, we're talking the chi stuff. Yeah? We're talking also about the creative force when you're doing creative things. It's that energy, that people energy, that humanity bringing stuff up thing. You know, when it chips it down and you can draw stuff out of yourself as well. You know, this is like talking about... We're talking, like I say, it's like the Jedi stuff, you know, they teach the science of meditation, breath control, righteousness, justice, correct action, guiding spiritual forces from within to give you power, you know. We're talking like developing Goku's Dragon Ball Z powers, you know, spark of life, sort of thing. So, and so, I mean, look at, I say it's all tied in with Egypt as well, isn't it? A lot of stuff about Egypt, which we'll do a show about one day, of course. But, you know, it's all tying in. And we'll look at, like, I mean, you've got to think of Egypt as well, and all this stuff back then. Talking about things being withheld, much of the records of Egypt were later deposited in libraries such as the one at Alexandria, which got burnt down. So that's all gone, or, you know, spirited away. Hey, little joke there. But yeah, but yeah, I mean, come on. So all that stuff been lost. I bet this stuff works, and obviously, if they're doing it for thousands of years before, you know, for people are thinking to do it, then they've probably got it locked. Yeah, got it dialed in, you know. But anyway, so it goes on to say, because of the lack of a true understanding, the Greeks developed a love of wisdom as a result. I thought that was interesting. I don't know if you can prove that, the claim, I guess, but then they did have a love of wisdom. That's true. They did have this love for wisdom or philosophy, which encourages, it says here, it says, yeah, I'm going to read it all. It's kind of having a bit of a dig at the Greeks. But it says, because of the lack of true understanding of the Greeks developed this love of wisdom or philosophy, which encourages ideas and speculation more than action. Okay. So it says here that African genius Imhotep, known to the Greeks as Asclepius, was a multi-talented student of Tuhuti, who was Hermes, and he said of the Greeks, "For the Greeks have empty speeches, that they are energetic only in what they demonstrate, and this is the philosophy of the Greeks, an inane philosophy of speeches. We, the Egyptians, by contrast, use not speeches, but sounds that are full of action." I think, dude, going in it hard. Talk to him, you know. Dude, letting them know. So the way I'm interpreting that is, no, they're talking the talk, they're talking theory, and it's like, you don't even know. You don't even know we're doing the do. So when we talk, it's a bit like, do you know what? It's got that Spartan kind of energy. Maybe the Spartans figured it. Do you know? I don't know. Maybe the Spartans figured it, and that's like, nah. Well, you know, and then when they get threatened, we will invade you. If we win, we will rape your wives and burn down you. And they're like, and the Spartans are right back. You're like, yeah, if. Do you know what I'm saying? It's that story. It's that kind of vibe, isn't it? It's like, you don't know. But true that. You know, Greeks did take the name from Nigratia. So true that. Just saying. This is what history is telling us. From more than one source. Just saying. Anyway, I'm just reading. I'm just the messenger. Although, I've seen 300. Anyway. It goes on. We'll go on, shall we? We'll go on. Let's have some more. Eh? Want some more? Eh? More evidence of African martial arts origins can be found in Japan. Yep. Japanese history. So they've got... I didn't even know this about Japan until I read about this, right? I just didn't know. Fair enough. Right, there's another way to say it. Yeah, so, history of Japan, right? The Aboriginal Japanese are called the Ainu. The Ainu. A-I-N-U. Right. It says the etymology of the word karate and the history of Buddha shows you like some evidence of coming from Africa. Okay. So it says the Buddhist background and principles of thought can be traced back to black people in India known as the Dravidians. Okay. So that's... Okay, so I'm going to say that again. The Buddha's background and principles of thought can be traced to the black people in India, known as the Dravidians. They inherited India's old black civilization known as the Harappan civilization, which existed from around 4000 BC and was the contemporary of Nubia prior to the first Egyptian dynasty. Okay, so I suppose they're like in between guy, just before Egypt's first dynasty, crossing over Nubia, then Harappan civilization are there for a bit, and then the first Egyptian dynasty comes along. So man, this is like, 6,000 years ago. Do you know what I'm saying? 6,000 years ago. This is a way back. It's a way back. Okay. So, so in the indigenous Japanese, I've got some links into Africa. Okay. And it says in the centuries that follow, the Dravidians of India's experience and culture and they experienced a cultural and religious invasion from the north, about 1,500 BC, by Indo-Europeans who call themselves Aryans. Okay, so here come the Europeans. And it says after centuries of conflict, as recorded in the epic Well, I don't know if these are Europeans exactly, the Aryans though, But yeah, it says centuries of conflict, as recorded in the epic Mahabharata, the Aryans prevailed. They absorbed much of the arts, sciences, and religious deities and indigenous Indian population, and in its place established the caste-based faith of Hinduism. Okay, so yeah, well, okay, so we've got a little bit of history there, and so all the links will be in descriptions. But a quick note from Wikipedia on Dravidians. It says the origins of the Dravidians are very complex subject of research and debate. So like I say, there's a lot of crossover with all of this stuff. But any of these kind of investigations with stuff that's going on in the world in ancient history, there is a lot of crossover, and there's a lot of friction from scholars not wanting to say stuff, and racism and religions kind of blocking each other, and it's like whatever. But that's why you gotta do it yourself, I'd say. Go and look for yourself, man. Talk to people, go and find out, read books, just go and find out for yourself. You can't trust television's a fantasy world. Anyway, let's move on. Do a show about that. Anyway. So, alright then. So looking at the basic martial arts history, we've got some interesting history from Asia, from Europe going through, and now we've explored the facts of the origins of martial arts being, from Africa, which kind of makes sense when you sit back and think about it. That brings us to the Bodhidharma and his origins there. So we established that there's this stuff going on from way back. So I just want to I just wanted to build it up first before really dropping in on it, because there is a backstory. There is a backstory of all of this stuff. So it's like watch that TV show CSI, and they see the cool bit in the lab with the funky music, and then they get the evidence, and it's like, no, that's just like the money shot, man. That took hours of lab work, man. It took weeks, weeks of boring, repetitive tests, and you don't show that bit. But yeah, there's a backstory to this stuff. But when it comes to history and this consciousness exploration, human potential, the fringe edges of weirdness stuff, man, them details matter. You got to find that stuff out and connect these dots so you've got a picture. So anyway, so what's the official reference then for the Bodhidharma? So it says, in 520 AD, a monk named the Bodhidharma left southern India for China to refine and spread the teachings of the counter-religion to Hinduism called Buddhism. Buddhism was a religion founded on the teachings of Siddhartha Gautama, who taught the Four Noble Truths to enlightenment. While often portrayed as Asian, the Buddha was a black man. Ooh, boom. There you go. It's punching in the face. Say that again. While often portrayed as Asian, the Buddha was a black man. Sir Godfrey Higgins, an 18th century English scholar of ancient culture, produced 2-volumed works published in 1836 titled I don't know what this word is. Ancalepsis. Okay. 1936, publication, 2 volumes, Antipasis, an inquiry into the origins of languages, nations and religions. His research reveals that the following passage: in the most ancient temples scattered throughout Asia, where his worship is yet continued, he is found black as jet, with the flat face, thick lips, and curly hair of the Negro. Today, we awake to the facts that Buddha's tightly curled hair knots and elongated lobes are unmistakably African cultural traditions. They are not snails that protect His Holiness from rays of sun, nor are his extended earlobes a sign of wisdom, as some scholars and early martial arts instructors used to teach. It's true, I've heard that, the long earlobes and stuff. But this is saying, no, just black guy. And funnily enough, actually, in studying metaphysics years ago and stuff, I did come across there's these 3 wise guys in Buddhism, these 3 like wise kings. I hate say it like that, but it's like the 3 wise kings kind of thing. Those guys, well, there's 3 wise king types in Buddhism, three black dudes, you know. And I think metaphysics, I think it was from Dr. Phil Valentine talking about this. I've always remember this quote saying that they were called the Nagas. Okay, now the Naga is the serpents, the snakes, the symbol of wisdom. It's the very final phase of learning Penjak Silat. You learn the animals. Okay, the final animal you learn is the ape in a monkey, because that can mimic the other animals. So it's the biggest syllabus. And then you go on to the Naga level, where you're able to shapeshift between the animals flawlessly. Okay, so you're trying to reach the feathered serpent level, you know. So it's interesting that you know, saying the Buddha's black and pointing out the flat face and the earlobes, and it's like, there is black people involved in Buddhism. There is, definitely. Seen it. Say the Nagas. And if you think about this in language, say this guy's studying language, okay, that's what he was looking for, the origins of religions, nations and language. Well, in language you can interchange a vowel. You can swap a vowel over. So Amen can be Amon and such, like Amon Ra. Okay. So if you think about Naga, you know, you've got to switch one letter, and then you've got the bad word that you don't say about black people. So that made me wonder, maybe that's where the word comes from. Maybe that's one of the most powerful parts that you could talk about when it comes to black people and the origins of Africa. So if you can bastardize that word, the Nagas, change it to something else and make it bad, it's like one of those classic inversion tricks, isn't it? Classic Jedi mind trick, put you down trick. But it's a thought I had when I came across that. Anyway, back to the Bodhidharma. Okay, so it reads that at a temple known as Shaolin in China, Bodhidharma prescribed a set of exercises and movements to keep the monks healthy and awake during meditation. These movements and breathing exercises, again, always important. Don't forget to breathe. Okay, so the movements and breathing exercises became known as the 18 Hands of Lohan, and formed the basis of Chinese Shaolin Kung Fu and later Japanese Karate. And it says here, although it must be noted that the indigenous Ainu on the island of present-day Hokkaido, Japan, contributed significantly in the transmission of martial arts to those islands. So it's not just the Bodhidharma. Some people was like, this is cool stuff, man. We'll spread that too. So it's not just on him. That's fair enough. Give him some credit. Okay, so and these people also, it's the spreading of Bodhidharma's, like I mentioned before, is known for the spreading of Buddhist philosophy, which derived from ancient Kemet originally. Some of the teaching could be traced back. So, So they taught them in the Shaolin Temple to, going to maintain the exercises, and it will teach you self-defense skills, and this is all designed to preserve the body. Okay. And they're saying that this is like where the spiritual things comes in, because once you preserve the body, then it could be mastered. That was the idea. and then it could be utilised to unlock the spiritual centres within and provide a pathway towards your liberation of the soul and the without. Say the within and the without, the in and the out, the inside and the outside, the dark side and the light, using the force. That's almost like the difference. It's that tying in again. I quote Danny Dyer from the film Human Traffic, when there's a scene where they're having these deep conversations out of the face on drugs and having one of these little epiphanies where it's talking like Darth Vader seeks to conquer outer space, whereas Yoda seeks to conquer inner space. And it is a bit of that exchange, you know. The more of the spiritual work you can do on the inside, the better you're able to apply yourself in the physical world, you know. So anyway, yeah, the spiritual pathway of martial arts, they're intrinsically linked, you know. It's just the way it is, man. And we see examples in modern times, because similar paths to fulfillment and spiritual enlightenment have been. These paths have been travelled by well-known fighters. Ended up going from a fighter to becoming, you know, a kind of spiritual person, both in and out of temples, mosques, churches. For example, if you study the lives of martial arts masters, like I was saying, doing the martial arts thing, there was a guy called Ed Parker, and a guy called Bruce Lee, and a guy called Muhammad Ali, and a guy called George Foreman, and they've all been martial arts masters. And you'll see that spiritual quest refocused their lives. Ed Parker and Bruce Lee became profoundly spiritual in the late years of the study. Muhammad Ali embraced Islam. George Foreman became a minister. Yeah, these are they're not mere coincidences, are they? Right. I think it's inevitable. I think it's an inevitable direction. Every serious martial artist will eventually end up taking that route, because they follow paths towards. They may follow different paths towards liberation, but they'll find themselves along the same road paved by these Africans like 3,000 years before Christ. People have been doing this a long time. Yeah, we've been here a while, folks. We've been here a while. Anyway, so going back to the roots of this. Okay, to mention that, because those paintings, they're really fascinating. There's depictions on the wall with the you know, showing the moves. Okay, in the Mahez tomb, and it says that, I mean, it says that a standard army of 600 well-trained soldiers who were successful in battles, right? And then and it says that Hai, as in little nickname for Bodhidharma, Hai, was a benevolent man and much loved by his people. And it was like, well, it was kind of revered. Do you know what I'm saying? It was a prime character, you know. And it talks about how him and the king, and the Bodhidharma and the king. It says it was the king Amenemhat. That's it. Amenemhat. It says Amenemhat's got Amenemhat. It basically says that you need to try and visualize that you've got an African martial arts master and a priest, prince, Amenemhat, conferring with each other for rank in the temple centuries before that kind of stuff's happening in Asia, you know, and then coming to us in the movies. We're talking about we achieve a rank with a belt. Do you know what I'm saying? That's what they're doing back then. It's like the earliest recorded practice of warriors putting on a belt before a workout can be found in Africa. The first two paintings on the eastern wall of the Baqet III Tomb that was talking about before, it depicts two fighters who ritualistically tie a belt around the waist before they square off and begin sparring. And the hanging ends of the belt that are so familiar these days can clearly be depicted. Do you know what I mean? You got the two little, do you know what I mean? Tassely bits or whatever hanging out. So it's like, back then, it's like the Bodhidharma and the priest prince deciding, are doing the gradings, giving people the new belts and that, It's like, what? Way back then, So, I'm saying you could bet your bottom dollar they had tournaments and stuff, and MMA kind of like, but that was the thing. But well, wasn't it? And gladiators and stuff. But yeah, I think it's funny that they've got belts and that, And I wonder if the black belt then is it emptiness? Because that's the thing with Buddhism, isn't it? Trying to aim for emptiness, which sounds crap for a Western mind, but then it's like, no, because with emptiness, things can then be put into it. If it's already full, it can't. So it's that sort of. It's a bit like if you do a punch with your right hand, well, you can't do a punch again, can you? Until you chamber your arm back again. So you know what I mean. You got to go empty, so you can go full, and empty again to go full. Anyway, yeah, probably a poor description, but yeah, I'm gonna go on. Yeah, so you got the little belts and that from back in the day, and it says these ancient warriors, doing the same stuff as modern warriors, man. And like I say, people are ending up on these spiritual paths through, this sort of switch and roll. I mean, there was a guy called there was a Kempo grandmaster called Donnie Williams, who was known he was a law enforcement officer, teaching a form of discipline that ended up being known as Christian karate. Grandmaster Williams has also got the title of bishop for a church that he ministered for like 15 years, and it's like there's this thing where martial artists, it's common for them to go through this physical fighting path, get spiritual, start going along that, and then it kind of like they'll land sort of like somebody else after that. Do you know what I mean? And they'll like perhaps even take on a new name or get a title like bishop, sort of saying. It's common. It's common. So like that's why I wanted to make this point at the beginning of making it throughout. It's not all about fighting and violence, and there's stuff to this, and it's all part and parcel of the same stuff. For me, it's like the point of having things like Olympics, to see what the body can do and see how far you can go, and it's like inspirational, to see what we're capable of. And that's how I think of it anyway. So I mean, there's also, say, I think about the symbolism as well. Okay, it says here with the Black Karate Federation magazine, it says consider as well the fact that the BKF's patch and logo depicts the cobra. To the Africans in Egypt and the Indus Valley, India, and so we're talking these ancient origin places. The serpent symbolically represents the sort of rising up. It's not just the symbol of wisdom. It's rising up. The cobra's rising, right? And that's the rising up of latent spiritual forces, like I mentioned with the Kundalini. It goes up your spine and connects your chakras, right? And it's being expressed through the body, yeah. And that's why it is. And it says also in this article, it mentions that in addition to traditions with the African origins of martial arts, okay, and it's a way to transform lives that can be found in the very names of some of the disciplines themselves, such as you can see things in it once you've realised, like pancration and karate as a modern day martial arts. You may have been taught that in the Japanese language, karate do translates as meaning empty hand way, but kara, the kara bit from karate, means empty, and the karate, translates as hand, right? And the word do it means Tao or Tao or way, right? So that's what it means. It's correct. However, if you look at far older uses of the term karate before Japan, then guess what you got? You break down a word in the ancient Egyptian word of ka, ra, and te, right? So let's break them down, because it's got this ancient Egypt, this, karate. There's 3 2-letter words there. So what does that mean in Egypt? So looking at these origins, ka in ancient Kemet, in ancient Kemetics or Egyptian languages, has double meaning, dealing with the spiritual and the physical. Okay, so ka means, in the Kemet languages, vital energy of the soul, or the soul. So your ka can be your soul. It's often described as the body double. It doesn't really convey the understanding of the soul properly as a subtle vital energy. But the Egyptians' idea of a vital energy ka is very much like li in Japanese, or chi in China. I mentioned them earlier, or prana in India. Another definition of ka in the Kemetic language is a body, or more precisely, the dead or empty body, as in the mummy. Right. Okay. So that was interesting. So that's ka. And ra, or res, in the Kemetic languages means to wake up. Right. To rise up, to keep awake, or to watch. Ra is also the name given to the sun, the Egyptian sun god Ra. Okay. Which renews. So the sun's renewing itself by circling to reappear. In fact, you can find the prefix re in many words in English that points to the, like the recycling, you redo sort of thing. And that's coming from, it's got Kemetic origins. Okay, so why would the Egyptians... why would Egyptian words show up in the English language? It's all origin stuff. It's because the early letters of a European land, the early settlers of European land, right, revered Africa and Egypt. Yeah? They revered the African Egyptian symbol of the cross, known as the Ankh. Okay? It's a bit like a cross, a Christian cross, but the line on the top is like an oval instead. So that's the Ankh. Okay? The Egyptian Ankh, yeah, was revered. So we've got some of these Kemetic words in European languages, in English. And guess what? England was originally named Ankland, which over time became England. Ankland, England. So even England, its very name, where I'm from, where I'm here right now, its very name is coming from Africa. Okay. So Ka and Ra have some significant meanings. So what about Te? Okay, so in the Kemetic languages, Te, it means hand. Right? That's fair enough. We've got it all covered then. Let's see what the rest of it says. It says, in the ancient Kemetic writing system, the symbol for Te is basically meaning out of, or to go out, or to emit, or to give, or to set to place. Okay, so Te in ancient Egyptian means go out of, go out, emit, give, to set, to place. So don't overlook the fact that the Midinate, otherwise known as the hieroglyph, a Greek term meaning writings of God, by the way. It says Te is an illustration of a hand. Okay? And in Japanese, the word Te is also the word for hand. So that word Te is hand. It's hand. Everyone's using it for hand, depicting a hand. So that also, in ancient Egyptian, Ka means your spirit. Yeah. Ra is the light, right? And Te means to emit, and hand. So even in ancient Egyptian karate, it's basically just brazen telling you use your spirit double body, Ka, to wake up and rise up, your light force, and then Te, emit it out your freaking hand. Give him a wormhole punch. Come on. Come on. And and I thought, well, I got this book. This is unrelated to this, or as far as unrelated, the Bock Saga, which is, about a Finnish family, but I thought it's got a glossary at the back, and that's about ancient language. That's supposed to be the first ever language from the Green language. Anyway, thought I'd just check that out, see if they've got a word for ka, ra, and te, and they have, right? So I thought, how well do they line up with this from the Bock Saga? So for ka, they've got ka, kas, or kas, right? It's a rock shape. It's a rock in the shape of a Dutch cheese, right? Which is one of those big Edam cheeses. It's like a big, it's a circle, or sometimes almost orb shaped, almost like a sphere with flat tops on, right? So that's like almost like a ball, but it's a circle. So ka, it's a rock shape or a Dutch cheese in the shape of a Dutch cheese, right? Okay, it's like a big rock and circular. Okay, so ra or ah, it says that means one of the 8 powers. Ra, ah, or is one of the 8 powers. So is that a reference to breathing? I wonder what the Egyptians call the lift, the breath, the lift. Right. So that's the rising bit. Okay, so ka is that rock, or if you think of the Dutch cheese shape, like almost a ball, then I'm thinking of your magnetism, of your spirit energy, because the ka, if we go back to the Egypt one, that meant originally, spiritual and physical, your double body. So they're talking about your spirit body sort of thing, your chi, whatever. So if ka is your rock, that's your main energy stuff, like in the shape of a Dutch cheese, like your aura around you. Okay, so is the Bock Saga, the ancient Finnish language, which is supposed to be coming from the root language of all languages, ka, rock, this cheese, is that referring to your chi and your aura? Okay, and ra, one of the 8 powers, air, ar, and ra, okay, that's light too, of course. But what it says, one of the 8 powers, this is the breathing thing and the lift, right? Because they call that breath the lift. And te has no special meaning in the Bock Saga. It just means tea. Okay, the drink of tea. But this could be about the patience and the discipline and the emitting part. Because although te means hand in the others, in the Bock Saga, te is tea. But with the explanation of the other explanation, they said that te means hand, but it means to emit. You're going to emit from the hand. So I'm thinking, well, tea requires patience to wait for it to brew, wait for the flavour to emit, to go out, to give, to set place, to set out tea. And you do tea ceremonies with discipline, don't you? In a certain way. That's the end result of it. So even in the Bock Saga, going back to the glossary, it loosely says the same thing as the karate stuff that you get in Japanese and in ancient Egyptian Hermetics. Okay. So, moving on. Found a paper that takes it takes out. See, I mean, this is deep dive stuff. Got a crossover with Africa and Chinese culture, and yeah. So I found this paper. I found this academic paper. That's, I had a look into this, and it looked into the cross cultures from China and Africa. And it makes this nice quote, because it's looking at the combats as well and the martial arts, and it's got this lovely little detail here, and it said that it was referring to African and Chinese culture. It says, in which are the trinity made of the trinity for the combat. It's combat, well, with both cultures. It's combat, spirituality, and dance that constitutes the core values of African martial arts, and that's what's investigated in this paper. Okay, there'll be links in description. Read this paper. But I thought that's especially interesting, considering the Pencak Silat that I studied, because there are 3 ways that you what they call them katas in karate, or a salutation in kung fu. You learn these forms, and I learned some in doing Penjak Silat. But when you demonstrate, even if it's just a technique somebody shows you, when you demonstrate it in the Silat that I learned, there's 3 ways to demonstrate it, or 3 flavors that you give it. Okay, so you're doing the same thing with each 3 styles, but what you do is it just reminded me of this: the combat, spirituality, and dance. Well, there's 3 levels that you project it with in Silat, and the first level is you're just doing it. You're doing the motion you've just been shown to show that you can do it. Okay, so you're just doing the sort of practical, slow. You look, I know, yeah, move here, put my wrist there, blah blah blah. I'm just demonstrating, careful there, slow there, easy to see. So you got that, and then the next level up is where you do it with full force. Okay, so you're giving it raza. I think there's the word ra again, but yeah, raza. So giving it some oomph, giving it some, the pedal to the metal sort of thing. Yeah, giving it some juice. So raza is when you're doing it for real. Okay, so there's demonstrating level, there's doing it for real level, but then there's there's the dance level. There's literally a dance level that you do your martial arts with, and you just do it a bit more artistic and exaggerated. And there's no rules to it, just it's personal expression. And I think that's an effort to try and draw some of your spirituality out and forget about looking silly and forgetting about the physical whilst doing physical stuff. So the dance element's vital too. And funnily enough, we see that the dance element, there's a martial art, capoeira, that's specifically made to be a dance. It's a style of dance, but it's a style of dance that slaves invented so they could practice martial arts without anybody noticing. You see, capoeira. That's interesting. Anyway, yeah, like I say, all the links will be in the descriptions. You can look these things up, because I want you to be able to find these things. And I'm not just making it up. And there's what do you think about this? This is what it's all about. What questions are coming up for you? I'm trying to find as many answers as I can get, but I know I'm going to come to more. It's going to lead to more questions, and I ain't got the answers, man. I'm just having a look, just trying to transmit what I find for someone else to maybe take and run with, or if you find it interesting. So, what do you think, man? But yeah, as I say, all the links will be there for you, always, with every show. So going back to this, looking at these different styles of martial arts, right? There's so much crossover, it's almost just crazy. People know each, people have been linking up for a long time. So check this. Here's a little list of some martial arts, man. Check this, right? Throughout the world, these styles are tying together. Yeah. So there's Kompegana, just much like what they can be seen from the Shaolin, right? A bit like Shaolin. You've got a Saki, or Sakai, S-A-K-I, from Northeast Africa. Very, very similar to a variety of Kung Fu styles, especially Wing Chun. Okay? And similar elements can be found in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu also. There's a style called Jirobu. That's very similar to Jiu-Jitsu as well. There's a style of wrestling from Senegal called Kazo Cha Shikana. Kazo Cha Shikana. There we go. And okay, Gidigbo of Nigeria, West Africa. Both of them very, very similar to a Russian martial arts system called Sistema, and also similar to Shuai Jiao as a Chinese wrestling. Okay, which is like a judo offspring. Judo, which is an offspring to Jiu-Jitsu, is very much like Nuba wrestling, the original wrestling, which is similar to Greco-Roman wrestling, which is also very similar to Sambo in Russia. Like I mentioned, capoeira, that's got its origins from Nongola, which is a fighting form from Angola. So Zulu stick fighting of Southern Africa, and European Suri stick fighting, very, very similar to modern-day fencing. And it can that always takes my mind off there, because then you get the Filipino martial arts as well that use a lot of stick fighting, eskrima. So, you know, they're all like tied in, man. And the stick fighting similar to, say, modern day fencing, the way you use the wrist, and in the way that, you know, you use a buckler and a targa in fencing, and the weapons practices of Makaza and Shikana, which I mentioned earlier, I hope I got it right, is very similar, like I say, to that is also similar to the Filipino martial arts, like I say, with the stick fighting. So they're all kind of tied in together. In the tradition of Dambi boxing, Nigerian fighters would wrap their hands with ropes, dip them in glue, get broken glass on it. Well, they do that in Thai boxing and Muay Thai. You know, famously in the Jean-Claude Van Damme film, and also, you know, in the spoof, the hot shots and that part do. But yeah, so been doing this a while, man. Been doing this a while, and among other evidence is, like I say, in Japan, you know, there's a Japanese indigenous, kind of, you know, heavily bearded, thick wavy hair. You know what I'm saying? Brightly coloured clothes, almost identical to the patterns and clothes worn by the Amu, or the Amu in ancient Egypt. So you're like, And if you look at depictions of the Amu people, they were described as Asiatics, who are the ancestors of the indigenous Japanese, yeah. And they're supposed to be, I can't find this, but they're supposed to be a Prince Kamenhotep II from the 12th dynasty, and there's walls which are supposed to depict I think it's a priest, Nefertitep, and men. They're all heavily bearded. Supposed to be, there is supposed to be some depictions out there and some wall paintings of these people. Like I say, if you look at Egypt's, like the hieroglyphs and stuff, you look at, they've got lots of different people, different coloured people, and with slightly different hair and stuff. You know, it's only about 5 or 6. You could probably go on a browser and get some images up. But yeah, it makes you wonder. And with this particular one, supposedly, although I couldn't find it, it says that they're clearly not slaves. Okay, so they've got some black slaves in, that's all. No, because these people, you know, these aren't captives. These aren't tied up, man. These people are carrying weapons like bows and arrows and throwing sticks and clubs. You know, they're travellers. They're friends from another neighbouring place or whatever. You know, they're not slaves, man. So yeah, I mean, the martial arts, karate, back linked into Africa, like I say, the descriptions of them, paintings, wavy hair, beards, thick wavy hair. It's like, come on, you know. Like I said, they're the original sort of Japanese. And the clothes are similar, the colourings similar. You know, you gotta look, gotta go where the evidence takes you, ain't you? So there's definite sharing of knowledge and spreading throughout the world, and I think this extends to many things, not just with martial arts. Like there's crossover with cultures throughout time, man. So yeah, I mean, yep. I love that though, with the Kundalini rising and the karate, and it's just always Kemetic origins, man. You know, definitely. So definitely ancient Egypt origins, even with the words. Like I said, like the Greek, the pancration. You know, in pancration, the Greeks who are known to have studied these arts and sciences in Egypt named that martial art pancration, which we can define pan as meaning all, and krat or kurt meaning powers. So it's to say, the way of bringing forth or draw out the power or essence of the spirit. So even in pancration, it says what it is. Yeah, the same as it says it in ancient Egyptian, the same as it says it in Japanese. It say what it is, name it. So give it power, I suppose, or take its power. Yeah, that's how you supposedly get rid of some monsters in it, some demons. If you can find out the name, you can say the name, and then you can control them. So it is told. But anyway, let's go back to this article. Ancient Egyptians knew, if you studied ancient Egyptians, you know they knew about the spiritual body, and they knew it was more powerful than the physical body. Their entire society and culture was devoted to the pursuit of knowledge and spiritual enlightenment. Their entire culture and society committed to it. So could it be like yoga, the study of movements and martial arts, originally intended to be used as keys to unlock latent potential within us? Yeah, so the spirit could rise up. I think that's what this stuff's for, the breathing techniques, the yoga. I think that is what it's for, you know. And if it is, then a few hundred years of modern martial arts practice that's been marked by, it's to say, crass commercialization may have very little to do with the tradition that is many thousands of years older. It could mean that the martial arts today are certainly not being practiced for the purposes they were intended. Okay, apart from, like I say, just a small few that maybe get to the top of the fighting career and end up being very spiritual as a necessity because they're already on that path, you know. So even in the Hermetic languages, like I say, the karate and caste, karate can be written as karast, kareste, right? We have the kar and the rest and the te, karest, as in Christ, as in the anointed risen one. And res, from ra, res, comes up again in the word resurrection, to rise back up, right? And in the Bible, Genesis 32:22, Jacob wrestles with God, right? When the man saw he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip so that his hip was wrenched. Sounds like some technique, maybe some hip throw or some leg grab or something. And it says, you know, Jacob wins, he rises victorious and blessed the man. He rises up victorious, and the man who he beat, he blesses him. And his name gets changed from Jacob to Israel. You know, and then it goes on to decides to name the place Pineal, saying it was because God saw his face. It says it's because he saw God face to face, and yet he was spared. So if hang on a minute, you name God, you had a fight with God, or you had a fight with a man, and it turns out you've wrestled with God or whatever, and it turns out it was really God, and you did okay. It's got space, so you call the place where you wrestle Pineal, and you're now called Israel. Okay, so let's reflect on this for a moment. Right. Okay, so Israel, to reflect his complete insight into the Hermetic principles. Right. It's like it's saying, it's took the word is from Israel. Is, it's a female principle, Isis, okay? The male principle, Isis is, okay? And the male principle, Ra, okay? And the divine is El, as in Hebrew word for God. So is Re El, is female principle, male principle, divine. Okay? That sounds like a bit like the balancing stuff, doesn't it? You know what I'm saying? See how that comes together? Learn the male and the female. You know what I'm saying? Learn your animal nature, learn your light nature, balance them out. Boom. Yeah? Learn your feminine aspects when you're male, learn your masculine aspects when you're female. You know that stuff, man, all that good stuff. And it says, think about it. For Jesus, who many believed studied in Egypt during his lost years, or, you know, or perhaps didn't die and studied in India after, as a lot of Indians believe. There's supposed to be a grave for Jesus in India. That's another story. But anyway. But yeah, it's not difficult to imagine him as a skilled spiritual warrior, martial artist, on his way to self-mastery to become the risen, the Christ. The life of Jesus parallels that of another crucified saviour that resembles closely in words and deeds. He is a dark black figure whose name literally means the black one. Speaking of the black, not powder blue, warrior from India who became deified. His colourful life and epic battles against the invading Aryans are recorded in the Bhagavad Gita. he was none other than the illuminated master, Krishna. So we got Krishna. Oh man, it gets biblical stuff, dude. It gets all biblical on us. So, okay, so every age produces ascended masters such as Krishna, or a benevolent warrior priest. Alright, such as the aforementioned Prince Amenet. Okay, ancient Kemet. Alright, so it's almost certain that during the modern era, the martial arts sciences in the West will lead a few practitioners, if not more, to similar levels of insight and achievement, right? As we mentioned, like Bruce Lee and whatnot. And I'm sure there's got to be people doing this today that we don't know about, I'm sure. So in Africa today, despite her many problems, there can still be found masters and warrior priests of high spiritual orders amongst the Dogon of Mali, the Ife of Nigeria, the Zulu of South Africa, and other African people. And I'm sure in other parts of the world as well, no doubt. Hiding there in the jungles, man. Traditional martial arts are still being practiced out there somewhere. Like I say, I'm sure the jungles of Southeast Asia have got some stuff going on, no doubt. And Borneo and that they used to have their headhunters, the Dayak tribe down there, man. Burma, they like a good fight, you know. They know how to do it. Anyway, it's another story, ancient history. Okay, so people do end up on these spiritual paths, man. It says that, it's got, is this another example? It says that the Mexican and the Kao-Nuba people of present-day Sudan still have a mandate that requires every young man to enter into martial arts training. See, these arts have much more to do with the development and continuation of spiritual traditions than anything else. Yeah, and like they used to teach in the Far East, used to teach kids at school the martial arts. So then if you do that, it kind of like means there's no soft targets when you become adults. Especially if you've been doing it since you learnt it at school when you first did it at 6 and you're now 66. You've been doing it 60 years. So you're not no soft target pensioner, are you? You're kicking crap out of people. So, just a thought. But anyway... But yeah, there was an Iowa State wrestling coach, sort of side note, Bobby Douglas, who claims direct lineage of the Nuba of Sudan. So, said in an interview one time. But he said, even today, wrestling is still part of a religion or religion of Nubia. The religion of Nubia. I was like, okay. And I know that there's I saw a documentary once about Sikhism. And Sikhs have this warrior caste that they sacrifice the ability to have sex, and they gradually like destroy the erectile tissue by like kind of rolling it around a stick, kind of thing. And it's like, man, they're not just doing this stuff for nothing. You don't go to them kind of extremes, do you? Just to look the toughest, or to, you know, there's a commitment there to something, you know. Anyway. I suppose as humanity evolves from the age of belief and speculation to embrace the future that demands knowledge and application, the future fortunate inheritors of these glorious arts will be the generations to come. From among their ranks we may find martial artists who will dare to rise above the philosophical and ego-based approach to the study of the martial arts instead understand and apply the sciences that were formulated in Africa many centuries ago. I think this is where Bruce Lee needs a special shout out here, and yeah, you can't not mention it because he got a lot of backlash from Chinese master. He got a lot of backlash for, they said he was sharing our secrets with the enemy, or at least potential enemy. And yeah, and perhaps if you're not being treated particularly well, and all that, but he just wanted to share that art and let people know. And this is what people can do, isn't it? Like I say. So shouts out to Bruce Lee. So he got a lot of backlash from that, for sharing stuff. But hey, this is why we did this stuff, man. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of podcasters out there that's also getting backlash, also getting problems with what they're saying and talking about. I'm sure there are. That's why you do it, man. That's why you do it. Or find out what's what. There's a lot of people in this world who don't want us to know. And it's always been that way. Always will be. That's why you've got to do your own work. Anyway, that's my opinion, and I'm entitled to it. Anyway, it goes on in this article. It says, to prepare for this, however, one must be ready and willing to take up the challenge. Like the spiritual warrior Jacob, we must be prepared to wrestle with it and overcome a formidable opponent in ourselves. True to say that. Even like doing a podcast, jumping on YouTube, posting a video, takes a bit of bravery, calling into a radio show. You'll crawl out on a limb a bit sometimes, don't you? But anyway. So, Bodhidharma, this is where he's coming from. This is where this stuff's coming from. It's ancient stuff. You know, if the Bodhidharma is spreading Buddhism, you know, credited for spreading that to China, that stuff's coming from ancient Africa, man. This stuff's, I think it's worth looking into. Because if there's any goodies to be had, go to the source information before it's all got filtered out and changed and whatever, or misinterpreted, or, you know, I try and find the source information, don't you? Get the master copy. Okay. But anyways, there's a lovely little quote here from when we talked about Hermes earlier. Actually, it was an African called Tuhuti. Well, Tahuti, some words of wisdom from Tahuti, which is found in the Kybalion, which is a book that, again, you can look that up. It was these disciples that come up with these teachings, or some description of what it's about, kind of thing, of Hermes philosophers. But anyway, yeah, the Kybalion is more important today than ever, as it reaffirms our mission in this game of life, as Tuhuti said. But the masters, knowing the rules of the game, rise above the plane of material life, and placing themselves in touch with the higher powers of their nature, dominate their own moods, characters, qualities and polarity, as well as the environment surrounding them, and thus become movers in the game instead of pawns, causes instead of effects. Yeah, it's an old-fashioned way of saying grab the bull by the horns and just do it, you know. So as soon as I mention Hermes and the Kybalion, we'll just quickly mention, because it's philosophical, spiritual stuff, I'll just give you a quick rundown of the 7 Hermetic principles, okay? So the Hermetic ideas, we've heard this kind of this spiritual talk with Tai Chi and Taoism and Buddhism, Falun Dafa. You know, that's principles of that is truthfulness, compassion, forbearance or tolerance. You know, I'm sure we've heard of you know, that with the gurus and masters that teach about meditation, mindfulness, peacefulness. Okay, so let's just quickly blast what Hermes is saying, or Tuhuti, right at the beginning. So his quick 7 principles are principles of mentalism. The all is mind, the universe is mental. Okay, the principle of mentalism states that the universe is akin to a mental projection that is like, it says, like a manifestation 101, which is like using your thoughts to shape your reality. For anything to be, a thought must precede it. Through this principle, it's believed that God is consciousness or thought, and the universe is a manifestation of the mind of God. Using this law, we too can harness the power of our minds and create the life we want. Principle 2. The principle of correspondence. As above, so below. As below, so above. The Kybalion. We've all heard this quote before, but maybe you never knew it was from Hermes. It's Hermes that coined it. It closely related to the first principle of mentalism and states that where we hold our thoughts and mind, that will become our reality. Okay, it explains that there are many places of existence, including those of low and higher vibrational frequencies, and how they're connected. Okay, so the principle of vibration, that comes next at number 3. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. Okay, yes, believe it or not, the idea of vibes has been around for a long time, very, 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 very long time. Principle of vibration states that things, both physical matter and spiritual energy, hold a certain vibration. Basic science tells us atoms are in constant motion, as is the universe itself. Even our hearts, as they beat, give off different vibrations depending on our emotional state. Okay. And when we're vibrating high, we're able to avoid low frequencies that don't serve us. Okay. Principle 4. The principle of polarity. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same opposites, are identical in nature but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. Interesting. So, the principle of polarity explains that seemingly opposite things are actually one and the same to varying degrees. A simple example of this is hot and cold. Hot is just the absence of heat, and they're both one thing: temperature. Physical matter and spiritual energy are the same thing, with spiritual energy vibrating at a much higher level, such that it can't be perceived by our senses. Love and hate are two ways of experiencing the same thing, our relationship towards something. This is the foundation of alchemy, or the ability to transmute your experiences at will. Principle 7 is principle number 5 next is the principle of rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its... Oh, I'm so popular. Everything flows in, out and in. Everything has its tides, and things rise and fall. The pendulum swings, manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. Okay, so this is closely related to the principle of polarity. This fifth principle states that between the opposing poles there exists an inherent rhythm. The tides move in and out. We inhale and exhale. Everything is in motion. Nature has its seasons, and so too do we. Understand the principle, allowing us to recognize our lives and the universe's natural rhythms, so we can actually work with them rather than having them work against us. Okay. Principle number 6, the principle of cause and effect. Cause and effect has its effects. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but the name for a law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. Okay, so that's saying everything is connected through the principle of cause and effect. For each cause of one thing is merely an effect of something else, going back to the very beginning. I think that's the first law of Newton, actually. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. First law of Newtonian physics there. Okay, so principle number 7 is the principle of gender. Dun, dun, dun. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. Dun, dun, dun. You're allowed a gender. You're allowed an agenda. Do you have an agenda? Anyway, don't start me off. Right, the 7th principle states that all things have masculine and feminine qualities. Yes, the two sexes can be thought of as a physical manifestation of this principle, but as we're all coming to understand, on an internal level, all of us hold both energies. Think the left and right brain. Masculine and feminine energies exist in not only the physical plane, but in the mental and spiritual plane as well. The unity of these two energies is essential for creation. And when one is out of balance, it says when one has a balance of both, they're better able to apply all of the principles together for maximum benefits. So this is the thing, I kind of mentioned this earlier as well. It's almost like the up, down, the left, right. You balance these things out, get balanced, balance your light nature, your animal nature, balance this stuff. And you've got it, man. You're onto something, you know. You sort of elevate yourself, you know. And there's actually not necessarily specifically talking about the Bodhidharma, but there's the African culture and the African roots of. It was shown in the documentary Wesley Snipes, actually. It might be on YouTube, actually, as Masters of Martial Arts. So you can dig up that documentary. You can get some of this stuff. You can see a video about some of this stuff. But there was also a journal. Say there's another journal I just want to quickly give a shout out to now. The academic journal from 1985 that gives a quick reference. It was African Roots in Asian Martial Arts, Journal of African Civilizations, issue 7, page 138, 143, 1985. Pop a link in as always. And so I'm going to pop a little quote in here from this has been looked at. So we've got a documentary, but this academic journal is written by a martial arts master, actually, called Kilindi Iyi. Okay, so if it gets a little bit more hippie and woo at this point, even though this stuff's ancient, it ties into things concerning the ability of the body and lost knowledge, as we've been talking about. But then we're going to go full steam ahead with the woo, with the aforementioned Kilindi Iyi, because this guy is a Grandmaster Baba Kilindi Iyi. Was a native of Detroit. Okay, he studied and taught ancient and contemporary African fighting sciences. Right, it made a huge impact on his own city through educational and humanitarian organisations. Okay, he was the head instructor and technical advisor of the Tamarian Martial Arts Institute. Their mission is to inform the world that martial arts and sciences began in Africa. Was a strong and fierce force in the Black Liberation movement, believed in human-centered movements where no other human was excluded. Accordingly, he had a deep understanding of the long-existing fight to maintain and preserve the human spirit. Also has a big interest in working with psychedelics. Okay, the spiritualness, the consciousness, all this this stuff, and it's, you know. So I mean, I found a little YouTube video. This guy seems pretty cool, you know. He seems to know what he's talking about. I found a little YouTube video and I took a clip from it because it was kind of funny. It kind of made me laugh. So I'm sure I don't mind. Just a short clip, so I'm just gonna play it now. It's just like from the intro, but I'll put the link in for the video anyway, so you can just go and sort of go and check it out for yourself anyway. But yeah, here's this little clip. Then I just want to play this for you.
About Wakanda, which was a mythical place, but Wakanda is not a mythical place and is not a mythical people. And the Black Panther is not a mythical comic book character. You have the Black Panther Society in Africa, which eats the Amanita pantherina mushroom to get the powers of the Black Panther. They use the Black Panther mushroom for the powers of the Black Panther. But they use the same mushroom in Japan, and that mushroom delivered what was called ninjutsu, or the dark Japanese martial arts. Ninjutsu came out of a mushroom, a psychedelic mushroom. As a matter of fact, for those that don't know, I'm a martial artist. That's what I do as my work. I teach martial arts, ancient and traditional and contemporary African fighting sciences. And all of the martial arts that you see have entheogens that go along with them. How you think, the Kung Fu guys, they're standing on a blade of grass or jumping to the top of the tree and, 1,000 arrows come and they just knocking them out of the way. That's all entheogenic use. Because they would have battles where they never engaged physically. They took the entheogen, stood back, and they battled entheogenically between the two warriors. So nobody was killed, but you found out who had the best skill and the most skill. These type of things went on. They were common. We had Masquerade Warfare. Where you see the masquerades in Africa, you may see a bunch of raffia or somebody on stilts and things like that. They did battle the same way. This was all part of the sensibility of the entheogenic use in ancient times, in the ancient world, that is re-emerging now. We're only at the beginning. People always say that the 60s was a failure. Oh, the hippies are gone, and the 60s was a failure. They got rid of. No, that was just the beginning.
Wow. Wow. There we are then. That made me laugh, that did. I was listening to that. I was like, what is going on? You know? Because he's talking like they're taking the mushrooms, and I think straight away I thought, you know what? I thought of the old Norse, man. The Berserkers. You know? Have you not heard of the Berserker, the Vikings? I'm sure you've heard of the Vikings, man. They have the Berserkers. And it says, okay, the Old Norse writings corpus says the Berserkers were said to have fought in a trance-like fury. Yeah. Characteristic which later given rise in modern language to the word berserk. Okay, so where berserk comes from, to, you know, furiously violent or out of control. Okay, as attested to in numerous old Norse stories. And whether or not any of you aware of this or not, but yeah, the Norse supposedly, like these guys, these berserkers, the rage that was induced voluntarily by the consumption of drugs, quote unquote. I would call them medicines if they're from nature, but anyway, drugs such as hallucinogenic mushrooms or massive amounts of alcohol, which, you know, get inebriated, whatever. But yeah, it's the psychedelics. It counts. It really does count. It's not about getting high. It's the ancient the Hinduism, the colourful artwork. You know, they're looking to seek an understanding of space and time. That's what Eastern philosophy is doing. They've got space and time. Western does the material. That's how it goes. You know, and even in Hinduism, there's a lost practice, a lost substance called soma. No one knows what it is anymore, but it sounds like it was some kind of brew that they used to drink, some hallucinogenic. You know, and when we're talking about getting in touch with yourself and your spiritual evolution and stuff in nature, this stuff counts. The entheogens, it really counts as stuff. In fact, if there's a candidate for an alien on the planet, there you are, because there's a unique phosphorus group in the magic mushroom areas, the psilocybin mushrooms, that are completely unique. Nothing else. It's not, you know, so. But yeah, I found that fascinating. Like I say, this martial artist, you know, talking about the psychedelics and those epic scenes that you get in movies that seem impossible, or these impossible stories. I think, wow, if they're doing it on that astral plane, that changes things. Yeah, if you're doing it in an out-of-body experience or astral projecting, that changes things. Do you know what I'm saying? And then it's almost like you can do simulated warfare. It's sort of what it's suggesting. You could do simulated warfare, and you could say, no, actually, I would have lost this, so they don't need to actually go to war. Do you know what I'm saying? If you know they've got this guy that can do the astral stuff all in real life, then he'll be able to beat you. Do you know what I'm saying? If he beats you in the astral world, he's going to beat you here. Sort of like that. So, I don't know. I just thought it was food for thought. So, I mean, this Bodhidharma character, to me, it seems like that original notion is the correct one. That there was this guy that, I don't know what he was doing with his life, but at some point he decided to go for a wander, go and walk the earth, literally, for a long, long way, and ended up, you know, he studied the animals along the way. He studied the tiger, how a tiger fights. The Bodhidharma, he studied how a monkey fights, or a snake fights, cranes, pelicans. You know, that's the basis of the animals. I don't know if a mantis was in there in the beginning, but it's a small creature to kind of watch and whatnot. But, you know, that's where these things come from. And I can say, from my studies of Penjak Silat, and in terms of mentioning this trance word, you can induce trances, but you don't necessarily even need psychedelics. Yeah? You see this with, I think there's some hunter-gatherer tribes that still... There's a hunter-gatherer tribe that's still left. The Nicaragua jungle is the desert next to that. there's hunter-gatherers still in the world that have been shown to have a psychic connection to the village somehow, because what they do is they do this thing called the chase, which relates to being in a trance, because they'll go in a team of 3, and one guy, instead of chasing the wild boar, one guy will run after it, and one guy will just walk, and one guy will crawl and pretend to be the wild boar, and he'll try and get in a mindset. Yeah, and then after a while they'll kind of swap, and he'll go running then, and then the guy that's been running for a bit will just walk for a bit, or he'll get down and do he'll probably just walk for a bit, and then the guy that's been walking will get down and pretend to be the boar. So you've always got a guy trying to psychically link up with where the boar's going. You've always got one guy walking, conserving energy, and you've always got one guy running, chasing it down. And by the time they get to it, it's exhausted. They don't even need to stick it. It just falls over, just exhausted. They preserve their energy. So they're using trance work to do that, not using psychedelics. And I can say, in terms of martial arts, you're learning Penjak Silat. I learn a tiger style where you get on the ground, pretend just like a tiger. You get on the ground. So when you've been knocked over, but you to turn into advantage, fight from the ground. It's brilliant. Okay, but if you study cats and pretend to be a cat, do the tiger stuff, and prepare your body and get flexible enough so you can do the stuff, you can sit there and you can imagine growing claws and teeth and getting fur and stripes and that. It don't really happen, but you can sit there and think about it for a bit, practice your moves, and you get missing time. Maybe get 5, 10, 15 minutes where you can't really remember, and you're knackered, and it's where you've kind of gone into it a bit. It's like you've embodied it in a way, kind of tricked the cosmos into thinking you're a tiger, so then you can jump a bit further. Or if you practice the crane style a lot, it lifts its arms up when it jumps to pull your lateral muscles up to give you a bit more upward force, so you jump a bit higher. Where, if you study birds and pretend to be a bird, you will get to jump higher. You kind of borrow some of the attributes or push yourself further than what you thought, kind of thing. So I just thought I'd give that a mention with that interesting trance story in the psychedelics mentioned there by Grandmaster Baba Kilindi Iyi. I thought that was pretty interesting, in taking psychedelics to learn this stuff to get on the higher levels of it. And I think, So, have a think. See what you think about this. I've had a bloody good think about it. That's the show on the Bodhidharma. Have a think about this, folks. Look it up. I definitely encourage you to look this stuff up. So I'm always going to provide all the links I can. I don't just want to make stuff up. If I'm speculating, I'll try and remember to tell you that's what I'm doing. But yeah, check this stuff out, man, 'cause this is crazy. This is crazy. But yeah, the Bodhidharma and the Buddhism stuff, the Gautama Buddha and Siddhartha and all that stuff, the Bhagavad Gita, the Rig Veda of Hinduism, this fascinating stuff, man. I encourage people, if you're interested in consciousness and world history and, where do we come from, any of this consciousness talk, the woo-woo tinfoil hat stuff, man, I definitely check them stuff out. Check out ancient Africa, ancient India, because they've been around longest, from what we can tell. So, source information there. That's what it's all about. But anyway, thanks very much, folks, for tuning in. And hope you have an interesting deep dive into some of this stuff. Or if not, if you don't find it interesting, that's fair enough. Can't win them all, can you? Anyway, that's it for today's show. Exiled Minds podcast with Liam Martin. Hopefully, like I say, I'll keep improving, getting better, and get more professional and stuff, like turning the phone off. Anyway. Thanks very much, folks. I'll see you next time on the Exiled Minds podcast with Liam Martin. EMPs. Bye.
Heard you?
No. They were talking to us.
What did they say?
For people.